Welcome back to Medicine with Meaning with Dr. Julie Ta. Today we're talking about one of the most overlooked forms of medicine, sleep. It's not just about getting hours of rest, it's about renewal and reconnection. Dr. Julie will take us inside the science of restorative sleep and how the mind, body, and spirit all meet in the quiet hours of the night. So let's dive in. Dr. Julie, how are you?
I'm doing well today. Thank you.
I'm really excited to dive deep into this topic that I know that will help many of us a lot since we do this every night I'm hoping at least 8 hours a night. So many of us think of sleep as just shutting down. From a medical perspective, what's actually happening in the body when we sleep and why is it so essential for healing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I know we often think of sleep as shutting down, but in truth, it's one of the body's most active healing states. There's a lot that goes on while we sleep. So the brain is hard at work. It's sorting memories. It's clearing toxins through something called the lymphatic system, and it's recalibrating the neurotransmitters. And this impacts our mood and focus. And then the immune system is active when we're sleeping. It's repairing tissue. It's producing antibodies that are very important for fighting infections. And then hormones like growth hormone and melatonin rise. And it helps us heal, restore, and regulate inflammation. So sleep isn't the absence of activity. It's actually a beautifully orchestrated process of renewal. It's the time when the body does its deepest work so that when we wake up, we can meet the day feeling energetic, having clarity, and feeling more resilient.
Wow. It really hit me that you mentioned that it's not the absence of activity. The body is always working for us, even if we're not physically or the outside of our body's not actually moving or in activity. Our organs and everything are always operating so that we are healthy. That's really beautiful.
It is. And, it just shows us the intelligence of our body that it, there's so much healing that goes on outside of our consciousness, and we just have to allow it to do its job. And during sleep, a lot of this healing and renewal happens.
And so you've described sleep as a biological reset button, and you've already run us through what the body does while we're sleeping. But can you explain what that means physiologically and maybe emotionally as well?
Yeah. So physiologically, sleep resets the stress response. So our cortisol levels drop, heart rate and blood pressure lower, and our nervous system shifts from that fight or flight into rest and repair. And the brain is clearing metabolic waste, and it again resets the balance of our neurotransmitters. And this is so important for our mood, our focus, our motivation. So, it is a reset, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. During sleep, it gives our mind space to process the experiences of the day, allows the mind to integrate emotions. And it's this pause that helps us release yesterday's tension and start the next day with more clarity and calm. So again, it's that reset. And when we shortchange sleep, we're not just losing rest, we're interrupting one of the body's most essential healing rituals.
So you said that the lymphatic system is also working while we're sleeping? Because I've heard before that the lymphatic system is something that works or gets activated through movement.
That's for sure. That's in the rest of our body. When we're exercising and moving our body, that helps the lymph the lymph system move. But in our brain, it's actually called the glymphatic system. And it's not so dependent on movement, but rather sleep, and that it functions best when we're when we're sleeping and in those deeper stages of sleep. So that's a good clarification point.
And when patients come to you exhausted or burned out, how do you help them see that sleep isn't a luxury, but a foundation of wellness?
Yeah, sleep is so important. Without it, our body not only suffers because, we're not allowing it to renew and regenerate, but we simply don't have the energy or vibrancy to feel like ourselves, right? Everybody knows when you don't get a good night of sleep, you just don't feel your best. We're cranky. We have a hard time focusing, and it doesn't allow us to make good choices throughout the day. But when we're well rested, we eat better, we handle stress more calmly, and we feel more present. So, when somebody is burnt out and not sleeping well, I really emphasize that sleep is the most powerful form of medicine that we have, and that it is foundational to health. It's the first thing I help people work on when sleep is impaired.
And I think that it's hard for people to distinguish sometimes. As much as we know that sleep is foundational, you've made it really clear by explaining to us why it is important. But I think that we've all known that nutrition, sleep, but like we spoke about in other episodes about having digestive problems, for example, and people being accustomed to it and not knowing that they have digestive problems because they are used to living with those symptoms. Maybe people feel tired and cranky and foggy a lot of the times, and they don't know that they might be lacking proper sleep, and they're used to living that way. So how do you know? How can you point that out for them? Because I imagine some people think I go to bed early, but they're not sleeping well.
Yeah, well, that's where your awareness is really important, right? That you check in with yourself and see how you're doing. And I think when people understand the important connection between how sleep impacts our gut health, how sleep impacts our immune health, how sleep is really important for emotional regulation, then we can start to connect the dots. And so it's a little bit of chicken and egg, right? Certainly, if you're not sleeping well, all of those systems are impacted. And if you're not making that connection, you may not have awareness that, sleep is contributing to it. And I think, what's challenging is that everybody needs a different amount of sleep. Not everybody needs 8 hours. Some people need more. Some people can function less, on less sleep, right? Those lucky few. And so really you have to look at yourself and see how you're feeling when you wake up. Do you feel rested when you wake up? And it's not just clocking in hours in bed. You may spend 8 hours in bed, but are you sleeping well those 8 hours? Are you getting up in the middle of the night? Is it disrupted? So that quality of sleep is important. Getting deep sleep is important. And I know there are all sorts of fancy devices to measure our sleep trackers. I have one. I don't think they're necessary. I think, sometimes, we forget to just check in, like, how do I feel when I wake up? I think, those of us who have these trackers, we like to check our score, and that's a useful tool. I always think that anything we track, we put more intention and attention to it, and we're more likely to improve it. But, just learning to check in with ourselves and use our awareness is really important.
And what was there a point in your life where you felt chronically fatigued, or that your sleep wasn't in the best quality? Has that shown up for you personally?
For sure. I've definitely gone through many seasons of running on empty. And when we're younger, like in our 20s and 30s, our bodies are more resilient and, we can probably function on less sleep. Certainly as a young doctor in training, that was just part of our lifestyle. When we're on call, we're in the hospital for 24, 36 hours and you're not sleeping. Luckily, I did that, in my 20s and 30s and my body was more resilient. But as I got older and I was juggling more, certainly juggling work and family and just my own expectations, that I put on myself, I could see that I, was just trying to push through with fatigue, through fatigue. And it over time, it just doesn't work anymore, especially the older you get. And so I noticed that, I was foggy and cranky and just not really present, even with those that I love and care about. And so I realized that, it wasn't just exhaustion draining my body, but that I was feeling less joy, that I was just kind of going through the motions of life. And so, I knew that I just needed to protect my rest and I needed to focus on getting more sleep. And when I was able to do that, I felt more grounded. I felt more clear. I was able to function better and I felt more like myself. So again, when sleep is not optimal, that's the first thing we need to repair. And that's the first thing that I help my patients to reclaim. And when we feel rested, everything starts to come back into balance.
And were there any particular rituals or boundaries or habits that you started implementing that changed everything for you?
Yeah. Well, when you set intention for yourself to get more sleep, you have to bring some tools and some habits or routine. And the first is just setting that boundary. Like, I need to go to bed earlier, so that I can get better sleep. I think for me, it was during menopause where for some reason, I would just wake up earlier. And, furthermore, with my menopausal brain, I just wouldn't function well if I didn't get enough sleep. I was really foggy and I just, had a hard time, performing well during the day if I didn't sleep well. So menopause sort of forced me to set these boundaries around my sleep and get to bed earlier. And what I came to realize is that, yes, we all know that sleeping well, having a good night of rest informs our day, but that our day also informs our night. So what do I mean? When we feel good and when we have a good day, it allows us to sleep better, right? And of course, when we sleep better, then our next day is better. And so really it's cyclical. And so, we have to break the bad cycle somewhere. And, it starts with having a good night of rest. So in my 20s and 30s, I didn't, and 40s even, I didn't have to be so protective of my sleep. And now in my 50s and in menopause, I do need to guard my sleep and really put intention to getting, for me, my 7+ hours, I'm good to go. But it's still a work in progress and it's still something that I have to work at because, who doesn't want to watch some episode of Netflix at night and stay up, late or just hang out with my husband. So that's where the boundaries have to be set in place.
And I think that you mentioned that it's cyclical and it sounds so logical and so easy to understand, but I think that breaking that cycle can be one of the hardest things for some people because, as you mentioned, you need to have having a good day will allow you to have a better sleep, but then it's like when they say go work out, and working out will probably help you sleep better, but if you don't have the energy because you don't sleep well, going to work out it feels like a dreadful task. So how do you have any
Yeah,
recommendations to break that cycle, or how can people start seeing the light at the end of the tunnel?
absolutely. So again, it goes back to your why, right? Why do you want to make this change in your lifestyle? And for me, it was about feeling good the next day, being able to function and think clearly and not be so foggy. And so that was a big why for me, that I had to really make some changes. And so at some point, you just have to make the decision that this is something you want to do and understand why it's important to you. And then you just simply have to do it, right? Um, but I think, creating a ritual at night is helpful. And I love that word ritual because it really elevates it. And it's something that I work on for myself and with my patients. And you work on your own ritual, right? Like everybody, is going to have something different. Um, for me, it's, doing some stretches and, a deep breathing exercise and, turning down the lights. For someone else, it may be something different. Lighting a candle, it feels kind of like a beautiful ritual. And well, candle is something beautiful, but it's also like turning down the lights. And so there are all these habits that can help promote sleep. And certainly, regulating our nervous system is a really important part of that. So deep breathing, doing some stretching, meditation practice can be very helpful. And the word habit is also nice to think about. Creating a routine. And it's hard in the first couple nights or first 3 nights, but once the habit is in place, then you don't need to think about it. It is just part of your daily routine. But it takes a while to get there. And that's where the intentionality is really important. And again, understanding your why.
Would you say that having a good sleep routine can be as easy or as difficult as having or maintaining a good diet or starting a good habit of eating?
They're all in the same, right? I think that, initially it's hard and you want to start one step at a time. So I don't recommend, working on everything at once, right? Like sometimes, and that's what I did when I was early, in my practice, when I was a younger doctor. I'd say, okay, do this and do that. And that can be overwhelming. So pick one lifestyle habit and start with that. And, then add another, when you're better at sleep, adds, eating healthy. But like anything, it takes practice. And once you're in a good rhythm and a good routine, then it's second nature. And then you don't have to put so much mental energy to it. But I think it's important to not feel overwhelmed and to start with one and to do one step at a time, then add another. That's where, that's where, working with a doctor or a clinician can be really helpful so that that person can guide you and doesn't feel so overwhelming. But I would say of all the healthy lifestyle habits, start with sleep. That is the most important. Again, it's foundational to health. And, why is that? Well, if you don't have enough energy or, going back to balancing our neurotransmitters, it's important to have our neurotransmitters in balance because it's important for motivation. Sleep is important for our hormones, especially the hormones that impact our appetite. I always say that, when when I'm sleep deprived, I just get hungrier and just, don't have good control of my eating. I just want to snack on carbs. So sleep is foundational in that way. And so it's important not just for good nutrition and making good food choices, but having enough energy to go exercise. So sleep is foundational.
Yeah, it seems like a good habit nurtures another good habit. But
That's
if you start with sleep, then you probably feel a good effect on or the other habits will feel a little bit easier.
that's right. Um,
Dr. Julie, in your practice, what are the most common patterns that you see in people who struggle with sleep? Do they share a common root cause, or what is the root cause behind?
Yeah. Well, I think for each person, it's going to be different, based on their personal, individual issues. But I think that the first most common is an overactive mind. So people who can't turn off at night, though their bodies are tired and they want to rest, but their brain is still in that go, go, go mode. So this is often a sign that the nervous system is stuck in that fight or flight, and that's usually from chronic stress. Another pattern that I see is dysregulated rhythms. So for instance, people go to bed, at irregular times, or they're on their screens late at night. Or many of us, and I've been guilty of this myself, we consume caffeine late in the afternoon to push through the day. Oh, and then we use alcohol to wind down. All of these habits confuse the body's natural sleep-wake cycle. But there are other root causes, that we need to look at. Sometimes it can be hormone imbalance or inflammation or gut issues, right? If we have digestive symptoms, it's sometimes hard to sleep or to sleep through the night. Another deeper root cause is emotional stress that hasn't been processed. So I tell patients that sleep struggles aren't a character flaw. They're a message. The body is saying something's out of alignment. So it's important to look for those root causes and address them and bring the body and all these different systems back into balance. And once they are in balance, sleep often restores itself naturally without forcing it.
So would you say that this is something that people should look out for before they try supplements like melatonin or sleeping pills? I think a lot of people do depend on sleeping pills to get a good night's sleep. What do you wish these people understood about the ecosystem of sleep, hormones, light exposure, emotions, and habits before they make a choice to try pills?
Yeah, I love that word ecosystem because it implies that it's a complex relationship of multiple factors. And so I wish more people understood that sleep isn't controlled by just one thing. It is an ecosystem. So melatonin, supplements, and sleeping pills can be helpful tools, but they work best when the foundation is healthy, right? So sleep depends on many interconnected rhythms, light exposure during the day, darkness at night. Even our blood sugar is really important. Very often I see people have blood sugar imbalances, throughout the night especially when people are wearing these glucose monitors, which has been kind of neat to see. We need to make sure that our hormones are balanced. In other words, cortisol. I've seen people who they do a salivary cortisol test, and their cortisol is really high at night. That shouldn't be. And so when your cortisol is high at night because of stress, or you're working on your laptop, your body doesn't think it's time to shut down. And then the last thing I would say in that ecosystem is emotional safety, and that we need to feel safe in order for our mind to shut down. And that's what allows our body to rest. So when those cues are off, you have too much blue light because you're working late, or you're eating late at night, or you have chronic stress, or your nervous system is in that fight or flight, the brain doesn't know when it's time to power down. So instead of starting with the pill, I encourage people to start by working on these rhythms. So get morning sunlight, move your body, create an evening wind down routine, process emotions before we go to bed. And when you support the whole ecosystem, sleep becomes something your body knows how to do. It's not something that you have to force, but our bodies forget how to do that. And I think that is sort of the harm of sleeping pills and supplements, melatonin even, that we forget how to sleep. And it should be something that our body naturally knows how to do when that whole ecosystem is supported.
I think it's like breathing, right? We're learning how to breathe properly, but it's something that we naturally, like, that's what sustains life. We naturally are coded to know how to do this. Also, sleep is one of those things that we naturally know how to do, but it feels as though all these bad habits or these rhythms that we have gotten into have almost made our bodies forget. Or it might not even be that our bodies forget. Is it our minds?
So that's a very good question. I think it's partly due to our modern living, right? Well, going back a few steps, electricity and our, ability to light our homes all day, all night, really disrupts our circadian rhythm. But I think more recently, because we have our phones and our computers, and many of us work from home, it's like we're on all the time and we don't have good boundaries. And I am certainly guilty of this one, where, our day doesn't end like it used to when we go into the office. We all try to finish our work, turn off our computers, and then that time at home is sacred. It's for ourselves, our families. But now, because we're available 24/7, we really have to put those boundaries in place, right? And some of us may have jobs where the expectation is you're available after hours. I hope not. Or, you have your own business and you want to be available. And so I think we have to be very cautious and, question that availability, and that those cues we give our mind and our body is that we're available on 24/7. And so that's not a good cue, and our bodies become confused. And so either you set better boundaries around work, or you really work on, powering down your mind and tell your mind it's time to, shut off and bring our nervous system back into that parasympathetic rest and digest. And that's where the mind-body tools can be really helpful, especially if your day is long, your day of working.
I've experienced this that you mentioned, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate. Whenever I go to the beach or somewhere natural or camping, for example, I naturally go to bed when the sun goes down, and I wake up when the sun comes out, and I feel rested. I don't even know how many hours those are or anything, but it's easy for the body to land into that rhythm if you give it the ecosystem again to to do so. But the hard part is in our lives, in our cities, and in our busy world, how we create that for ourselves, even if the demands are high.
Yeah, I know and hiking is so wonderful because not only are you in nature, but your body is in the rhythm of nature. And I think it does feel so good. And you're tired after a day of hiking and being outdoors, and your body, it just naturally wants to sleep. But yes, it's hard to recreate that in our modern lives. And I think, for so many of us, we sit in front of a computer and we're not moving our bodies. And so if you can reproduce some of that. So that morning sunlight, try to make an effort and get some morning sunlight, move your body, go for a walk. And the more movement you get throughout the day, the more you kind of mimic, those hiking, camping trips, and, shutting off our lights, or at least dimming them at night, is really important messaging to our body. It's like, it's time to rest now. And really, we're fighting against what our bodies are meant to do in that more natural state. And that's probably why we don't feel our best often. And when we go to nature on vacation, then we can feel the difference. It's like, this is how I'm meant to feel. And it does feel so good.
You already told us a little bit about how sleep influences immune strength and gut health, but can you tell us a little bit more about that, and also about mental resilience? How does that come into play?
Yeah. So, again, sleep is so important for all the different systems in our body, starting with our digestive system. The gut is repairing its lining, and that is really important for, the microbiome and lowering inflammation in our gut. So this is important for our mood. Remember, gut health is so important for our brain health and our mood. And the brain is actively working to integrate memories. It's also processing emotional experiences that we have throughout the day. And this strengthens our mental resilience. And then our immune system is working actively. It's producing antibodies and it's clearing out damaged cells. And I think, we all recognize that when we're worn down and not sleeping well, it's like, boom, we get a cold or we get sick. And so most people can, tangibly feel, when they're run down, they tend to get a cold, and that's because our immune system is, not able to do its job when we're not sleeping well. So every night it's like a tune-up for our body. Every system is resetting, and it's, communicating, between the different systems. And that is how we heal. And without good sleep, it's not just we don't feel well rested. We're actually actively healing our body, but we do feel more balanced and more grounded and just more alive, right? So it is a powerful, regulator of all of our systems. And it's just important for that rejuvenation that occurs just naturally as a part of sleep function.
And so I guess that balance that sleep provides within our systems makes us feel more powerful, right? Or like we have more emotional capacity to deal with whatever it is that life faces with, or to make better decisions even.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, we can all feel just when we're underslept, we're cranky, irritable, and just not as grounded to face, the challenges of daily life.
I wanted to go back to when you said that sleep, being able to sleep properly, has to do with a lot with the feeling of safety. And I think that not a lot of people say this, but I've thought about it before as well. Like when you sleep, you're lying down, and that's like complete surrender. And I know you've mentioned this before. Sleep is not just rest; it's surrendering. You're lying down. Can you unpack that idea for us?
Yeah. I love this concept, and I think it's a really good one to talk about. So rest is something we do, but surrender is something we allow. And I think so many of us have a hard time with surrender. We want to control. We don't want to allow. And if you think of sleep as surrender, then it's something we allow versus force or, try to accomplish, right? And that sleep asks us to release control. And, it allows our body to take over when the mind, turns off. And it's the moment that we trust that the intelligence of our body can manage everything for healing to happen. So physiologically, it's that same shift that we've been talking about again and again, where the nervous system moves from fight or flight into rest and repair. And emotionally, it is about safety and letting go. And that is a hard thing for many people to do. Many people don't feel safe. And that is something to perhaps work on, right? If there has been any trauma or chronic stressors, it is important to work on feeling safe. One part of that is mental. The other part of it is using mind-body techniques to balance our nervous system. And if you can shift your body into parasympathetic, that can help your body mind to feel safe. And, again, it's part of that cycle. And a lot of trauma work is about feeling safe in the body. That's a whole nother episode, but I want to come back to this idea of surrender as part of sleep. And it really is this practice of allowing. It's also the art of receiving, letting the body do what it's designed to do. That is restore, repair, and renew. And I think sleep reminds us that healing doesn't come from effort necessarily. And I have a lot of patients who, try so hard, and oftentimes healing comes from allowing. And I think that's hard for those of us who, I call myself sometimes control freaky, right? Like we just want to control everything. So I think it's important to think of sleep not as a task to accomplish, but it's a sacred act of trust. It's a daily practice of surrender. And it's a reminder that the most powerful medicine is not found in doing more, but in letting go. And in this instance, it's, letting go to the intelligence of our body, and that our body knows what to do.
I feel like some people have a hard time letting their guard down. And it may be, like you mentioned, trusting your body to repair itself, or just to do what it knows best without you intervening in some way or another. But also, mm, some people don't feel safe to go to sleep because they feel like the world is not gonna be functioning in the way that they would want, or that, oh, if I rest for a moment, then this won't be taken care of, or something externally might happen. And I guess that's a tough place to be. And I guess that's something that can be, as you mentioned, mitigated with mind body practice. But also, if it comes to a place where you find that you can't really deal with it on your own, seek mental health help.
Yeah, for sure. Certainly, uh, there are people who legitimately, have a hard time feeling safe. And in those instances, I do recommend finding a mental health professional who can help you with this um, embodiment work. It's using the body to feel safe in the mind. That's what it is. And I think, we've addressed it from the mind, and talk therapy is helpful, but I think it takes both. And that's where, there's the body mind, the mind body, and the interconnection. And, using mind body practices can ground and balance the nervous system. And that can be an entrance to helping the mind feel safe, and that you approach it from this multi-prong approach, and to seek out the support of a mental health professional who has experience in this type of work.
Dr. Julie, do you have a small practice for us that can help us calm our bodies and prepare for renewal at night?
Yeah. So, one of my favorite 5-minute practices is very simple. So before bed, you can, be lying down, you can be sitting up, and you place a hand over your heart, and you practice slow breaths. So, we can even try it right now. So basically breathe in for a count of 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then breathe out for a count of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And so you're just allowing for long, easy exhales. And I like this simple, breathe in for 4, breathe out for 6. And as you're breathing, silently remind your body, I'm safe. It's okay to rest now. And so this simple act can help shift out of fight or flight and into that rest and repair. And so just taking 5 minutes to practice this very simple breath work, and just reminding your body, I'm safe. It's okay to rest now, can be very helpful. And I think, so often, we're trying to find, that perfect nighttime routine, or that you have to practice meditation for hours. And no, that's not true. And just a few intentional minutes of stillness and breath can be very helpful for facilitating good sleep. And so even these 5 minutes tells your nervous system it's okay to let go. So tonight, rather than striving for sleep, simply allow it. Then the rest will come to you, and let your body remember what renewal feels like. Our body knows how to sleep. We just have to allow it.
Thank you so much for that. I have a huge takeaway this time. allowing this word is going to stick with me, not only for sleeping, but I think that just for everything else when it comes to health. You really hit an important point there. We try so hard to do and heal and extra effort, almost forceful. And maybe we just need to allow, because how can you force yourself into rest?
That's
Yeah,
right.
it's counter, it feels like opposite. So thank you so much for putting it that way, Dr. Julie.
Yeah, I love how you summarize that. You can't force rest. You have to allow. And yeah, that word surrender is a good one. I'm going to remember that myself throughout my day and certainly before I go to bed. So I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Julie. Well, we've reached the end of our episode today. Is there anything else that you would like to leave us with before we close our
Yes.
session?
Yeah, well, I always like to remind people that this podcast is for information only and it's not medical advice. Always check in with your own doctor about what's right for you.
Thank you, Dr. Julie, and thank you everyone for listening to Medicine with Meaning. If tonight you pause, breathe, and let yourself rest, remember, sleep isn't the end of your day, it's the beginning of your healing. Share this episode with someone who needs permission to rest, and join us next time for another conversation that blends science, story, and the heart of medicine.
Thank you, everyone. Until next time.